like I said, my family had like, they smoked cigarettes and they smoked marijuana on occasions, but no one had actually ever witnessed or had to experience the addiction issues I had. So yeah, they didn't, they wanted to help me and they wanted me to not go to jail because they know what happens in jail and they see the movies and they hear these horror stories about what happens while incarcerated. And they're not just stories, because that stuff really does happen. Like if you've seen it and you've seen shows or movies, and on different occasions, that stuff really happens. And they didn't want me to experience that. Let me remind you, I'm a kid, you know, I'm a young man. I'm 20, 21, 22 years old. And my mom, she's always did her best to like baby me and protect me. And she didn't want me to witness or experience these things. So she, you know, I mean, I would cry on the phone like a little kid and I would beg her, please, mom, please. And she's like, well, what are you going to do different? And I would lie. But this was my addiction affecting me. You know what I mean? It was my addiction that was controlling my words. Oh, mom, please, I'll never go back to that lifestyle. And, you know, she would give in and she would crack because she loved for me. You know what I mean? She loved me and cared about me. Same as my dad, he loved and cared about me. So he wanted me to, you know, not have to go to, you know, institutions and stuff like that, jails and stuff. But little do they know, in reality, like you had said, they were actually enabling me, because all they were doing was allowing me to get back to my addiction, back to the streets. And that's all I was worried about. In reality, I could promise, plead, and do all this stuff, but in reality, all that was important to me while I was in my addiction was my addiction and chasing more drugs. A lot of my friends had went to like different clinics, different rehab facilities, and that helped them. But for the longest time, even up to that point, I had refused help. I refused any kind of help. I told people they were crazy, that I didn't have an addiction problem and stuff like that. And I'd even been arrested because of my addiction problems. But my family would bond me out on every occasion that I had gotten arrested. My family was there to bond me out, and they're like, just don't go back to that, and we'll bond you out. I'm like, all right, please. I would beg and plead and anything I could do. And my family would let me out. We didn't have money, but my biological father, he had owned a house, and he would post his house up for my bond just so I could get out, because he feared for me. Because, you know, just like anyone knows, institutions are scary and they're dangerous. No one wants their loved ones there. So actually, that same day that I cried and I prayed, the next day, actually that night, I wound up in a very dangerous, risky situation. And this led to me being incarcerated. I caught a felony charge and was incarcerated. And this was when I realized that, you know, I mean, I really needed help, and it was time for me to get my life on track. And this is when I started trying to climb. And anyone who's in addiction or in recovery knows that, you know, everyone's different. But for me, like my first try wasn't right. You know what I mean? So I would say I started climbing, and for about 6 months I was doing good. This is while incarcerated. I did like 6 months. I did fine, and I was clean. And it seemed like every other day someone was bringing drugs around me, and I would say no and this and that, or they would make jailhouse wine, which is like when you put like fruit and vegetables, or excuse me, fruit and bread and in a bag, and you make like homemade wine, which is very disgusting, and it's can make you easily sick. And I would say no, and I would say I'm trying to do good. And then one day I was about 6 months, 7 months clean while incarcerated, and someone showed up with methamphetamines, and this was enticing to me because I had used these on the streets, and some of the guys that I had used with actually was on the same dorm as me. They were incarcerated as well, and it just influenced me to use, and I ended up using while incarcerated. So in reality, I knew what I wanted, but I just still wasn't on the right track. So I took one step forward that day, and I took two steps back, to say the least. So in reality, you know what I mean, I made a mistake. No one's perfect though, and I understand that. And after I did it, I had felt guilty, and I felt disgusting and dirty, and I knew that I needed to get my life back on track. Still wanted to stay sober. So I started again. I started my recovery and prayed to God for help and guidance. And I went another. I would say about almost a year. I would say I went maybe a little over a year, and I stayed clean. And the same situation occurred. I was still incarcerated, and someone showed up with more drugs. This time it was Suboxone, which is basically another form of opiates. It's actually prescribed through our government. They allow people to have this who are coming off withdrawals from heroin. And I had used these before on the streets as well. I actually used them numerous times trying to get clean, but each attempt was a failure for me. So this was enticing for me, and as well, I had people around me who I thought was my friends influence me, and so I used again. And that day, I did it for I want to say I did it back to back, 2 days in a row. And my second day, I'm like, man, I can't live like this. I want better for myself. So this was July 4th, 2018. This was July 3rd, the last day I used. It was July 4th, 2018. Still to this day, it's been 3 years, 1 month, and today's the 28th. So that'd be 24 days. So it's been 3 years, 1 month, and 24 days since I've used any drugs, and it's wonderful, to say the least. It's mind blowing.